Two armies stand facing each other on a flat plain. Between them, one chariot drives out into the empty ground and stops. The man in it is the finest archer alive. He looks across at the other side and starts naming the faces, his teachers, his cousins, his grandfather. He puts the bow down. He says he will not do this. And then his charioteer starts talking. What the charioteer says runs 700 verses. It became scripture on its own, carried and quoted by people who have never read the poem around it. Many readers see a scene there and conclude the sermon was set into the war later, a finished text lifted whole into a bigger one. Others say it was written for that gap. Either way, the most quoted book in India sits inside a family quarrel about who inherits a kingdom. This is the Mahabharata. It is the longest poem anybody has ever written. The tradition counts about 100,000 verses, and that number is the first thing you have to stop trusting. There is a text edited in Pune from 1200 manuscripts. There is a longer traditional text still sold in Indian homes, and there is a television serial people actually remember. So here is the promise, the whole arc, front to back, the dynasty, the dice, the 18 days, and the walkout at the end. And every time a detail is handed to you, the layer it came from gets named. Old core or later edition, text or television. One more thing, this is not dead mythology. It is living scripture for a great many people right now. We describe, we do not adjudicate. Start with the edition, because it decides everything downstream. In 1919, an institute in Pune began collecting manuscripts of this poem, in scripts from Kashmir to Kerala. The first general editor was Vishnu Sukthankar. The method, print only what the manuscript families agree on and push everything else into the footnotes. The result is a text of about 74,000 verses. That is roughly 20,000 shorter than the traditional printed edition most households actually own. So a scene can be real, beloved, painted on temple walls for centuries, and still sit outside the reconstructed text. That is not a contradiction. It is a layer. Second layer. The regional recensions. The northern and southern manuscript families are not sloppy copies of each other. They carry different episodes. Third layer. The Bhagavad Gita sitting inside the sixth book, the book of Bhishma. 18 chapters, 700 verses, a self-contained argument with its own title. It is chapters 23 through 40 in the Pune text and 25 through 42 in the older printed one. Even its address depends on which book you hold. Fourth layer, and this one trips almost everybody. Krishna's childhood is not in this poem. The butter, the flute, the cowherd girls all come from later Puranas. And the fifth layer is a television set. 94 episodes on India's national broadcaster from 1988 for an enormous number of viewers, that is, the Mahabharata. Now the thing the internet is most confident about, and it is not the plot, it is the weapons. The Mahabharata describes nuclear war, the claim goes, and flying machines. Here is what is actually in the text. There are astras, weapons released by formula and aimed by concentration, each named for the god who owns it. The Brahmastra is the worst of them. Its effects are catastrophic and cosmic, described in the register of a curse, not an engineering manual. And Vimana is a real Sanskrit word here. It means a conveyance of the gods. A self-moving aerial car, sometimes closer to a throne or a flying palace. Now the part that gets left out. The famous quotation about an iron thunderbolt and a gigantic messenger of death is not in any translation of the poem. It was assembled in the 1960s in a French book of ancient mysteries out of separate, unrelated passages, then copied outward for decades with nobody checking. There is a companion text, too, presented as an ancient aviation manual. It was dictated by a medium a century ago, and engineers in Bangalore later reported that none of its aircraft could fly. And the reason the claim survives all that is a translation. In the 11th chapter of the Gita, Krishna shows Arjuna what he actually is. Then he names himself, and the word he uses is kala, time. Time, grown mighty, come out to destroy the worlds. In 1945, a physicist watched a test in the New Mexico desert and reached for that line, and rendered it as death instead of time. That is where the welding happened. Now, the story. It begins 4 generations before anybody picks up a weapon, with a king who falls in love with a river. Shantanu marries the goddess Ganga on one condition. He never questions what she does. She bears him children and puts each of them into the water. On the 8th he breaks. He asks. She hands the child back, tells him it is finished, and leaves. The boy is Devavrata. He grows into the best of them. Best archer, best student, unchallengeable heir. Then his father falls in love again with a fisherman's daughter. Her father sets a price. The throne goes to her son, not to the prince who already has it. So Devavrata does 2 things in one afternoon. He renounces the throne in front of witnesses, and to close the loophole he swears he will never father a child. Flowers fall on him for it. He gets a new name out of it, Bhishma, the man of the terrible vow, and a boon. He dies when he chooses to. That vow is the crack the whole poem grows out of. The strongest man in the family is now permanently unable to inherit or to produce an heir. And the line fails almost at once. The new queen's sons die young and childless. There is a throne, 2 widows, and nobody to sit on it. So she calls a son she had before the marriage, a sage, ascetic, unwashed, alarming to look at, Vyasa, who is also, the poem says, its author. By the custom of the time he fathers heirs on his brother's widows. The first queen shuts her eyes at the sight of him. Her son is born blind, Dhritarashtra. The second turns pale. Her son is born pale and called Pandu. A maid sent in her place the 3rd time is unafraid, and her son is the wisest, Vidura. Blind, pale, and born of a servant. Not one of the 3 is a clean heir. Every disaster in the next 17 books runs out of that room. Pandu takes the throne because the blind one cannot. Then he shoots a deer that turns out to be a sage, and the curse is exact. Touch a wife again, and you die. His first wife Kunti has a secret. As a girl, a visiting sage gave her a formula. Call any god by name, and he comes. She tried it once on the sun to see if it worked. It worked. She bore a boy already wearing armor grown into his skin and gold fused to his ears. She was unmarried. She put him in a basket and put the basket in the river. A charioteer and his wife pulled him out. They named him Karna. Now, in the forest, that formula is a solution. She calls the god of Dharma and bears Yudhishthira. She calls the wind and bears Bhima. She calls Indra, king of the gods, and bears Arjuna. The second wife Madri calls the twin horsemen of the dawn and bears Nakula and Sahadeva. 5 sons, 4 fathers, none of them Pandu. Pandu dies exactly as the curse said he would. The widows and the boys walk back to the capital. Meanwhile, the blind brother has married Gandhari, who tied a cloth over her own eyes on her wedding day and never once took it off again. Her pregnancy lasts and produces a lump of flesh. Vyasa has it divided and set in jars, and out of the jars come 100 sons. The eldest is Duryodhana. On the night he is born, the jackals howl, and Vidura tells his brother plainly to abandon the child. The blind king cannot do it. So the cousins grow up in one house. 100 on one side, 5 on the other, and the poem makes that arithmetic feel like weather coming. Then a teacher arrives. Drona, a Brahmin, poor, extraordinary with weapons, hired to train every boy in the house. He teaches them all. He loves the one who practices after dark. And there is a boy. Drona turns away. A Kalaviya, a forest chieftain's son, refused for his birth. He goes home, builds a clay image of his teacher, and trains before it. He becomes extraordinary. Drona finds out, comes to see, and asks for the teacher's fee. He asks for the boy's right thumb. The boy cuts it off and hands it over. Then the graduation display. The boys shoot in front of the city. Arjuna is the best of them, and a stranger walks in saying he can match it. It is Karna. He is asked whose son he is, and a charioteer comes forward through the crowd, and the laughing starts. Duryodhana stands up and gives him a kingdom on the spot, so that the contest can be legal. Karna is his from that hour until the day he dies. The blind king names Yudhishthira heir. Duryodhana proposes a holiday. There is a festival in a town called Varanavata, and a house built there for the visiting princes. It is beautiful. It is also made of lock and resin and straw. Vidura warns them obliquely in a dialect only Yudhishthira understands, and a tunnel gets dug. They live in that house for a year and say nothing. On the night they leave, Bhishma sets the fire himself. 6 bodies are found in the ash. A woman and her 5 sons had come to the feast and fallen asleep drunk inside. The heroes escape by leaving strangers to burn, and the kingdom buries them as princes. They go into the forest, officially dead. A Rakshasa woman named Hidimba falls in love with Bhima, and their son is Gatotkacha, and he will matter enormously later. Then word reaches them of a bride, choosing in Panchala. King Drupada has a daughter, and Drupada also has a grudge against Drona roughly the size of a war. The daughter came out of a fire. So did her brother Drishtadhyumna, and that fire was lit specifically to produce someone capable of killing Drona. Her name is Draupadi. The test is a heavy bow, a rotating mechanism above the hall, and a target that can only be sighted by its reflection in water below. Kings fail at it. Karna is refused, or steps back, depending on which manuscript family you are reading. Then a Brahmin nobody recognizes stands up. Arjuna strings it, looks down at the water, and puts the arrows through. They take her home to the hut where their mother is waiting. They call through the door that they have brought back something remarkable. Kunti answers without turning round. Share it equally as you always do. She has just told her 5 sons to share a wife. The poem works hard to explain how a mother's word became binding, and the tradition still is explaining it. The dead princes are suddenly alive with an army behind them. The blind king divides the kingdom rather than fight and gives them waste ground. They burn the forest off it and build on the ash. And in it an assembly hall built by a demon architect whose life Arjuna spared, made of illusions. Water that reads as floor, floor that reads as water. Yudhishthira performs the great royal sacrifice, the one that declares him overlord. Krishna is honored first. A guest called Shishupala objects loudly and is killed in the hall at the ceremony, and Duryodhana walks the illusion floor. He steps into the water. He lifts his robe where there is no water, and somewhere above him people laugh. The poem is careful about that laugh. It does not make it Draupadi's alone. The later tellings do. But something in that hall becomes the war. Duryodhana goes home ill with it. His uncle Shakuni offers a solution that requires no army at all. A game. Yudhishthira cannot refuse an invitation to play. It is a king's obligation. It is also the one thing he is bad at. And Shakuni throws for Duryodhana. He loses gold, chariots, elephants, herds, the army, the kingdom. Then his brothers, one at a time, then himself. Then Shakuni says there is one thing left. He stakes Draupadi and loses. Dushasana is sent to fetch her out of the women's quarters, and she is in a single cloth, and she does not come willingly. He drags her in by the hair, and she does not weep. She asks the hall a legal question, and it is the sharpest sentence in the poem. Did he lose himself first, or me first? Because if he had already lost himself, he owned nothing, and he had no right to put me down as a stake. Nobody answers her. Bhishma says the law of property is subtle, and he cannot decide it. The elders look at the floor. The room has no reply, and knows it. Then Dushasana takes hold of her clothing in front of the court. What happens next is the most painted moment in the epic, and the layers separate right here. In the older text, the cloth simply replenishes. Garment after garment appears. The poem credits Dharma itself, unseen, covering her. The version everybody knows, where she calls out and Krishna answers and the sari runs on forever, is the later expansion. The Pune editors put that invocation in the footnotes. Dhritarashtra panics, gives Draupadi boons, hands everything back. Then he is talked into one more game with one stake, and Yudhishthira sits down again. 12 years in the forest, and then a 13th passed inside an inhabited place without being recognized. Being discovered in that last year resets the whole clock. Bhima swears 2 oaths on the way out. He will break the thigh Duryodhana bared, and he will open Dushasana's chest. He keeps both of them exactly. Arjuna goes north alone to fetch weapons. He fights a mountain hunter over a boar, loses, and the hunter is Shiva, who hands him the weapon. Nobody survives. Bhima meets an old monkey lying across a path who asks him to move its tail aside. He cannot lift it. It is Hanuman, his own brother by the wind. Hanuman makes a promise before he goes. In the war he will sit on Arjuna's banner and shout, and the shout will do half the work. And near the end of it, a lake. 4 brothers drink and drop. A voice offers Yudhishthira water in exchange for answers, and he answers everything, and they are given back. Year 13. They walk into the kingdom of Matsya as servants. Yudhishthira becomes a courtier with dice, Bhima a cook. The twins take the horses and the cattle. Draupadi becomes a queen's attendant. And Arjuna, the greatest archer alive, spends the whole year in women's clothing teaching the princess to dance. Krishna goes to the capital himself as an envoy and asks for 5 villages. 5. 1 for each brother, and the war does not happen. Duryodhana's answer is the most quoted line he has. Not so much land as can be covered by the sharp point of a needle. They try to arrest the envoy. The poem says Krishna showed them what he was, and the court could not look at it. Then he walked out, and it was war. 18 books. 18 days of fighting. 18 army units on the field, and 18 chapters in the sermon at the center of it. The number is a signature, not an accident. That unit is called an akshauhini, and it is defined precisely. Chariots and elephants in equal number, 3 horsemen for each of them, and 5 men on foot. 11 of those stand under Duryodhana, 7 under Yudhishthira. The smaller army wins, and almost nobody on either side of the field goes home. Day 1. The chariot rolls into the gap. Arjuna will not fight, and the sermon happens. When it ends, he picks the bow up. Then 10 days belong to Bhishma. He cannot be beaten while he is willing to fight, and he has named the condition under which he stops. He will not raise a weapon against Shikandi, born a woman. He does not die. He lies on the arrows that carry him, refusing the ground, and waits there for weeks for the sun to turn north before he lets go. Drona takes command. On the 13th day they build a spiral formation. Arjuna is not there to break, and a boy of 16 says he knows the way into it. Abhimanyu, Arjuna's son, he gets in, he cannot get out. 6 of the greatest warriors alive close on one boy at once, and the poem lets you count them. Arjuna's revenge takes a day and does not stop at sundown. The fighting continues by torchlight, and in the dark Ghatotkacha grows, and the Kaurava lines come apart. So Karna spends on him the one weapon he had been keeping back for Arjuna. It can be used once. Ghatotkacha falls, and Krishna, watching, smiles. Drona is unstoppable while he believes his son is alive. So an elephant named Ashvathama is killed, and Yudhishthira, who does not lie, is made to say the name. He says it, and adds the word elephant far too quietly. Drona hears only the first half, sits down in his chariot, lets go of his weapons, and is killed sitting. Then Karna. 2 days of him, and on the second one his chariot wheel goes into the ground, and a curse he was given as a student takes his formulas away. He asks for a pause under the rules of engagement. He is not given one. The poem has spent 17 books making sure you cannot pick a side. Day 18. The army is gone. Duryodhana is found hiding in a lake, comes out for a mace duel, and Bhima breaks his thigh, which is illegal, and everybody sees it. That night 3 men are left alive on the losing side. Ashvathama, Drona's son, is one of them, and he rides to the sleeping camp with the other 2. He kills the man who killed his father. He kills Shikandi. And then he goes through the tents in the dark, and the camp cannot tell friend from enemy. The 5 sons of Draupadi are killed asleep, mistaken in the dark for their fathers, who happen not to be in the camp that night. By morning the victory is worth nothing. The woman the whole war was fought over has no children left. The winning side is 5 men and a widow. Ashvathama then aims the Brahmastra at the last unborn child of the line, in the womb of Abhimanyu's widow. Krishna turns it aside and curses him. 3,000 years of wandering, unspoken to and unhealed, and the gem he was born with, set in his head, is cut out of it and carried away. Yudhishthira is crowned over an empty country and does not want it. The poem gives the throne to a man in mourning who has to be argued into sitting on it. Bhishma is still lying on the arrows. They bring the new king out to him, and the dying man teaches him how to rule at enormous length. Those instruction books are longer than the entire war. That is the real shape of this poem. It fights for 5 books and then explains itself for 2. Gandhari, who has 100 dead sons, curses Krishna's own clan to destroy itself. Decades later it does, in a drunken brawl on a beach, and the sea takes his city. So the 5 walk out, north on foot with Draupadi toward the mountain, and a dog attaches itself to them on the road and will not be sent back. They fall one at a time, and the poem names a fault for each. Partiality, vanity about a face, pride in cleverness, in the bow, in the appetite. Only Yudhishthira is still walking. Indra's chariot comes down for him, and Indra says the dog cannot come, and he refuses to get in. The dog is Dharma. The last test in the longest poem ever written was about whether a man would abandon an animal to be admitted to heaven. Then the final turn. He arrives and finds Duryodhana on a throne and his own brothers nowhere. He is shown hell instead and told they are down in it. He says he will stay in hell with them, and the hell dissolves because it was the last illusion and the difference was never as clean as anybody wanted. 18 books, and it does not end on a victory. It ends with a man refusing heaven twice, once for a dog and once for his brothers.